And today's subject is the touch-in, touch-out export utility, which you can see if you go into the utility module of either Storekeeper or Store Manager. There's a button here right on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Just as a bit of background, actually, touch-in, touch-out was originally an add-on option, and we charged for it. And over time, we decided that this was just too important to not include in the standard product, and so today it is. It is possible to turn it off, however, if you are uncomfortable about one of your clients going ahead and screwing up their inventory or something like that. There's a way of renaming a file, and that button will disappear and they won't have access to the function. But that's not very common, and instead, most people actually use it. So let's go ahead and touch the button and see what options we have. And there's actually three major functions within touch-in, touch-out: the importing of databases, exporting of databases, and updating of databases. So these are three different functions, and what you have available actually is going to depend upon which database you are looking at. So right now we're looking at importing of inventory. You can also see we can import serial records, customer records, employees, refs. I think we will probably not go into that today. It is kind of a very specialized topic. If we have some time and there's some relevant questions, we can perhaps do that, but by and large, it's not one of the more important features. We can also import vendors. Sources is the InfoTouch speak for the link between inventory items and vendors. And although you might think of that as being part of the inventory record, in our world, it's actually a different database and you import it separately. So it's actually two steps to both first import an item and then set up the links from that item to up to 10 different vendors. Lastly, we can import hold sales and purchase orders and transfers. All of these are pretty rare, however. The main events here by far are the importing of inventory, customers, employees, maybe vendors. We can import, depending on the database, information in one of a couple of different file formats. One is an ASCII file format, typically a comma delimited format where each field is separated by a comma and there are quotes around the individual fields. I am going to suggest to you that although we'll see this on the export side in just a minute, that if at all possible you don't use this function, use an Excel spreadsheet, as it's going to make your life a lot easier. When we go to export, we also get options for which database, whether it's ASCII or Excel. And there's even a special option for the inventory side, which we will cover in a few minutes. But you'll see there's less of a selection of databases to export. And again, I'll start out with a quick ASCII export, and I'll show you what that looks like, and then from there on, strongly encourage you to just ignore that and use Excel. By the way, if you do want to use Excel with touch-in, touch-out, Excel does have to be installed on the machine. So you do actually have to purchase a copy of Excel, have it there, and software actually uses that copy of Excel to do the data manipulation. Okay, let's start out by exporting inventory, and we'll just leave it at the default comma delimited options. There's more options here, but I wouldn't go here because you're still going to want to use Excel. But I want to at least demonstrate for you what we got here. So you pick your choices, and then you hit Select File. And Storekeeper is going to remember actually the last place you did that. It's Windows that does that. It's just going to open up a folder for you to where you want to place this file, and we're looking for you to give us a name. So let's call it pos.txt. So this is a text file. It happens to exist. I don't care. I'm going to overwrite it. And you'll see a progress bar going across, and how fast that goes across depends on a lot of factors like how many records you have. We just exported 2,563 inventory items, as well as your processor speed and your disk speed and whatever, but it's usually quite quick. Okay, I am now going to open up a folder to that window, and you see here's this pos.txt file we just created. And this is what it looks like. So it is a straight text file. You'll notice there's nothing on the top row to indicate exactly what's supposed to be in what position. This is one of the big issues associated with using ASCII files. So it turns out this first field is the item number, and then there's the cost, and there's profit types and other things, but not easy to tell from looking at this. And if we go across here, there's a lot of stuff here. So it's hard to, this is all still the first line inventory item that we're looking at, and we're still looking at it, and we're still looking at it. So it's a big record. It's very hard to understand what's in what position when you use a ASCII file format. Moreover, the real big bugaboo here is when you go to import. Because we don't know what field is in what position, you must put in every field in exactly the right order, or we're not going to import the record. So trust me, this is why you don't want to do this, but I did want to give you a quick start, a look at it. So let's see what the better way to do it is, and that is to export it to Excel. And I'm going to overwrite a file I created a few minutes ago here. You'll notice a little message there, converting to Excel format, and now the spreadsheet is ready. So if we come up here, this is basically the same information, but it's just organized in a way that is so much easier to deal with, both from the point of viewing it and most especially from the point of view of importing it. So let's take a look at some of the fields here. But before we do that, I want to call your attention to something that is important in general, but is extremely important when using something like TITO or Touch In, Touch Out. And that's the help file. So I'm going to press the F1 button on my machine, which brings up our help system. And if I go to the table of contents, under the utility module, you're going to see a whole section for Touch In, Touch Out. And this is a comprehensive section with lots and lots and lots of information. So I can't remember everything about this. That's what the help system's for, and it's going to be a very useful resource for you. So at the top, we have a little bit of general information, and then you'll notice a listing of the inventory database. So here are, in fact, the fields as they have come out on our spreadsheet. Item number, cost, profit type, the profit amount, the price, average cost, etc. And you will notice not only a listing of the field definitions, but also of the field types. So, for example, cost happens to be a price in our lingo. A price is different than a dollar amount because a price can have up to 4 decimal digits of precision. The profit type itself is just a number, 0, 1, or 2. The location is 8 characters long. You'll also notice that there are notes along the side here. And what these are for is to give you more details about special requirements associated with these fields. So you'll notice note B, note C, note X. Well, these things aren't always the order that we originally wrote them in. But if you go down to the bottom, for example, you can see that the profit type is a numeric field, and if it's 0, it's kind of your normal standard inventory calculated profit. But if it's set to 1, then the profit type is going to be a fixed percentage, or I should say the profit margin is fixed percentage and 2 is fixed dollar. So these are notes to help you deal with various kinds of special cases. Here's an important one right below it. This is for our inventory flags. Let me switch back to the product. We'll go into inventory, find an item. Doesn't really matter which one right now. And you'll notice in the Special Features tab that there are a bunch of options, some of which are checked and some of which are not. So in this case, this item is not discountable, but you can override the price, and it comes in different units of measure. All of these correspond to a number in the flag field, which is somewhere around here. So here's the flag, and you'll notice numbers like 512 and 1536. Where do these come from? Well, that's what this definition is here. So for example, if the item has serialized inventory, we're going to add a certain number to the flag field. If the item does support suggestive selling, we add another number. Now these numbers add up together, and it's a little bit of programming here. So if you need help on that, talk to support, talk to us. The easiest way to get this stuff right is to make it record the way you like it, export it, and then see what that value is, and you can just copy it to other records. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of fields here, and every single one in the inventory record is in this export. You might think this looks kind of overwhelming at this point if I'm trying to import inventory, but it turns out that if you import via a spreadsheet, we only require a very small number of these fields. And in fact, they're listed right up there, actually. So when we're looking for importing, not from a ASCII file, but from a spreadsheet, typically we're looking for only a couple of bits of information. The vendor number and vendor name, the customer number, customer name. You give us those columns and we'll import that information and default everything else. The most important thing that people use Tito for is importing inventory, and here our requirements are a little bit more stringent. So we need an item number, we need a description, cost, average cost, price, and tax categories. Still, considering all of the hundreds of, well, it's not hundreds, dozens of fields we saw here, this is a fairly straightforward exercise. And let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to take, and switch back to my spreadsheet here. I'm going to start getting rid of a whole bunch of columns because I don't need the profit type in the profit. So delete, sorry about that, that's not what I wanted to do. Sheet columns. We do need the cost, price, and average cost. We do not need most of these other fields here. And I can just keep on going down until I get to one that I do need. And the flag is not a required field. Taxes are. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, this is all the required fields we need. Before I get rid of the rest of them, I wanted to highlight something for you on the UPC field. You'll notice if we take a look, let me go ahead and spread this out a little more. You see the UPC of this particular type of liquor. I can't read the rest of the description right now. It doesn't matter. You'll notice that there is a single quote in front of it. And there's a reason for that. Because Excel, if that single quote was not there, it would see 0804, etc. And it would interpret that as a number, not as a string of characters. And by interpreting it as a number, what Excel would do by default is actually chop off that leading 0. It figures, well, we don't need it. So the single quote in front of the UPC field mandates that Excel treats this as a text field. And as we import this information, if we were to include the UPC field, we actually look for that single quote right at the beginning and strip it out for you. So otherwise, before we got to this technique, it was real easy to wind up with the leading digits. 0 is a very common leading digit in UPC codes, and they would be stripped out. This way we retain it quite easily. But for now, I'm just going to get rid of the rest of this stuff. And I'm now wound up with 6 columns, which, remember, we mentioned that was the required amount. I'm also going to get rid of most of the rows in here. This is the existing inventory items. We don't want to import them again. If we try to import an item that already exists, it will get rejected, and we'll talk about rejects in just a minute. So I'm going to get rid of every row in here as well except for one. So now we've got a new item number in here. Well, it's not a new item number yet. It's the item number of the last thing I've added to the system. And I'm going to go ahead and modify that by hand right now and make that 87,790. We'll put in a cost of $2.25. Leave the price at $5.99, sure. We'll set our average cost to our current cost. The taxes field, if you have one tax category and the item is taxable, set it to 1. The item's not taxable, set it to 0. If you have multiple tax categories, for example, Georgia State, County of Fulton, City of Atlanta, and you want to track them separately, you have to do a little more of that math we did on the flag side in order to get it to work out right. For example, if an item was subject to the first 3 tax categories, the number we put in here is 7, because the first category is 1, the second category is 2, the third category is 4. You add them up and you get 7. So that's just an FYI. Again, most people typically just use a sales tax, in which case this could be 1 or 0. And the general rule of thumb, if you're having trouble with this, is to create an item in the user interface, export it, and then see what the value is, and then you'll know what's correct. So we'll leave this at taxable, and I will change the description on this to bottle opener. I don't think I have a bottle opener. And now I am going to save this off, close it. Now, why do I want to close it? The answer is, when we go ahead and import inventory, which is what we're about to do, we're going to import inventory from a spreadsheet. There are some options as to what happens if we don't like what we see. So, for example, we could reject the item. And in some cases, we will always reject the item. For example, if you gave us an item with the same description as an existing item, it would be rejected. We can also, let's say you gave us an item number that already exists, and you're using what we call automatic numbers. I'm getting a message here. Yes? Yes? Yes. No, I'm on the webinar. Okay, bye. Sorry, Doug did not realize I was on the webinar, and I was afraid there was something wrong with the broadcast here. Let me make sure, if any of you have any chat messages for me, let me know. I don't see any here, though, so I'm assuming everything's okay, and Doug just forgot about the timing. So we can automatically decide to replace items that exist or renumber them. I think let's get a little past that for right now. We're just going to leave this at reject. All right, so what I'm going to try and do is import inventory. I'm going to select a file, and the file is the one that we just created, and we just added a record. If there were rejects, it would tell us we processed so many records and there were so many rejects. Now let's go ahead and open up that spreadsheet again. And you'll notice that in addition to the original tab or worksheet that we had, we've actually automatically created a reject one. And if you did have any problems, those records that were rejected would be put into this special newly created worksheet. If you already have one of these, we'll blank it out for you. And the first column that is in the spreadsheet is actually going to tell you why we didn't like it. Like, for example, you were missing a required field, or if you accidentally mistyped the name of one of these column headers, we don't know how to figure out. Let's say, for example, I tried this again, and I called this tax instead of taxes. Well, we don't know what field is called taxes. So if I go ahead and try and import this one, we get an error message because we don't know what to do with that column. I mean, maybe theoretically we should be smart enough to figure out that tax is an abbreviation of taxes, but we're kind of literal about it. And since you can always get the correct name for every column header just by exporting inventory, and by the way, even if you have no inventory whatsoever in your database, if you export inventory, you will get a row with all of the column headers in it for you. So there's possibilities where we go ahead and we can't do something because there's some problem. So that's the purpose of the reject function. Actually, probably a bad example here on this one. Let's go ahead and do it one more time. And I'm going to switch back to 87289. We'll go ahead and close this down and re-import it. And now it has rejected one record. That when one of the column headers is bad, it's not actually rejecting records, it's rejecting the entire spreadsheet. But now that we have a column header, excuse me, a reject here, a little bit obscure, but a data file error 5 on insert means that there's an item already there. So we are trying to help you through the process here and letting you go ahead and fix this stuff up and re-import it again until you get it right. Okay. I'm going to go back and export inventory again. And we're going to put it to the same spreadsheet. And I want you to take a look at something that's very important in terms of the way you're going to import inventory with our software. I'm going to move all the way out to the description column, and you'll notice that there's one column called description. Now, let's go to inventory. And you'll notice if we go to a brand like Coolers, excuse me, a department like Coolers, we've got brand, we got flavor, we got size. If I found something in the miscellaneous department, there's just one piece of the description besides that. Okay, these pieces we call indices, and each department has a fixed number of indices. So in the case of miscellaneous, we've got 2. If I wanted to find one again, let's take a look, for example, at the beer department, and here we've got type, brand, and size. So when you go to import inventory, there's really 2 options associated with the description, and one of them is generally easier than the other. So let's start with the other one actually. So you'll notice, for example, here I've got beer, all non-inventory beer, liquor, rum, Ron Rico, silver 1 liter, if I went down and got to some of my miscellaneous items, you'll notice the description is quite simple. We just got miscellaneous limes in this case. If you also look carefully, let's take a look at this line right down here where we've got a 10-ounce can of Red Bull. You'll notice that there are a number of spaces between the energy and the R in red, and a number more spaces between the Bull and the 10 ounces for the size. Let's take a look at that item. So it's a specialty beverage, it's energy, it's Red Bull, and it's 10 ounces. If I went to actually try and modify the description of the item here, I'm not going to save this off, you'll notice that I can type some extra characters, let's make that obvious as to what there are, 1, 2, 3, 4, before, I guess it's 5, before I actually run out of typing room. Similarly on the Red Bull, extra characters before I run out of typing room. Okay. Those characters, if you use a single description field, which is to say when you are exporting or importing inventory or using the department of all, those fields must be lined up exactly correctly, or else we will not import the item. So we need to locate each of those indices, each of the pieces of the description in the right spot in the inventory record. That's what is the key to allowing us to ring it up by description or letting you run reports, for example, on a from-to size of drink. So that can be kind of a bit of cumbersome work, to be honest with you. And it's not bad when you've got something like a miscellaneous department. It's just miscellaneous space, the rest of the description. That's what we saw just a minute ago when we went ahead and added this last item, the bottle opener. Very easy to do, but not so easy for something like beer or specialty beverages or wine or what have you. So there's a trick. Don't do all departments. Do one at a time. And that's why we have this set of options here. So if I wanted to, for example, go back to those specialty beverages and export it, and I'll just call this SBev this time. Now, when I get to the description area, instead of having one field that must be placed exactly correctly, we have actually a separate column for the department and for each of the pieces of the description. And because of that, you don't have to worry about where to place it anymore. You place it at the beginning of that field, and it makes your life a whole lot easier. So strongly recommend with any kind of complex department structure to import a department at a time. And again, by exporting that department first, you'll get a list, even if there's no items in there, you'll get a list of all of the different categories, and we do the work of going ahead and combining them for you. Okay, let's go back to our utility module. The other databases really are very straightforward in comparison to the inventory database. Let's take a quick look at a customer export. I'll send it to Excel. Here's that spreadsheet, and there's the customer number, name, phone, address, city, state, etc. As it turns out, with customers as well as employees and vendors, we only actually require two fields, the number and the name. So you really can get away pretty quickly and easily with importing a lot of customers and add stuff as you like down the line. So customers, vendors, employees, really a very straightforward drill by and large. The real work, because of both the complexity of the inventory record and the fact that people typically very often have thousands of them, is really where the focus is going to be as you use touch in, touch out. I didn't actually mention the update function yet. And you'll notice, by the way, when I hit update, the ASCII option has been grayed out. Update only works with Excel. So what update is designed to do is allow you to quickly update some existing record. And rather than thinking it in terms of I'm trying to create something from scratch, I know the thing's already there. Typically, I'm going to just find it by the number, like the customer number, the employee number, the item number. There's a special case on the inventory side where you can also find it by the UPC field. But generally speaking, what we're saying is we want to take something nice and simple and use it to update inventory, usually just a couple of fields. There's no requirement on updates except for that number field that's going to allow us to find the item or the customer. So let's take a quick look at that one. So let's go back to one of our inventory ones. Sounds fair enough here. So here's the item number. And let's say I wanted to update the cost, which right now is not set to anything, of all of these beverages from 0 to 250. If I could just type. And you know what? Maybe I'll go ahead and set the price while I'm at it $2 to $5. And I can't type today. There we go. Okay, I don't need other fields. What I need is an item number and whatever fields I want to update, and that's it. So we'll get rid of these columns, and we'll get rid of all of the rest of the columns. So now we've got a very simple spreadsheet with 9 rows, 9 inventory items. Cost is $2.50, price is $5. Let's go ahead and take a look at those items right now. I don't actually want to save that junk in there. So you'll see there's the 0 cost, 0 price, next item, etc. Okay. Now, you don't want to be modifying an inventory record at the same time that you do an update or an import function to it, because the inventory module has that record locked, and you'll get one of those messages that a required record is in use, please wait. So just hit close. Now we'll go ahead and update our inventory based on, what was it that I just did actually? Sorry. Oh, it's this SBEV one, and I need to close it. All right, so here is SBEV. And we just finished 9 records. And if we go back to our inventory module, $2.50 for the cost, $5 for the price for each of them. So update is a very quick and easy way. You don't need a lot of information. You can pick and choose as many or as few fields as you like, and you can easily update not only inventory, but customers, vendors, employees. This is the list of the databases you can use the update for. It's not available for all of them. Just taking a quick look to see if there's something else I really would like to go over with you here before throwing it open to the chat room rather than the questions this time. But hopefully this was a good introduction and especially wanted to concentrate on how you can go ahead and import inventory. So I think that'll do it for now. So let me go ahead and again, there's a chat button on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you have a plus to the left of it, click on that and it'll open up some boxes. You can type a message. In fact, I'll do one here just as an example and send it to either me or to the entire audience. So if you want to just go ahead and type down there if you've got any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them and spend some time going into other areas in depth. Okay, going to do the going once, going twice thing. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and type it into the chat box in the bottom right. Send it off to me, and I will be happy to respond. Okay, well, I hope that satisfied everybody's questions. If I missed anything, of course, feel free to contact me at any time. Send me an email, give me a call, and we'll get any questions you have taken care of. And hopefully this will get you on your way to getting customers up and running quicker and easier. Thanks so much then, and we'll see you at the next one. There is an introductory webinar tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and don't have any scheduled yet for next week, but I'm sure there'll be some coming up shortly. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.